What, Stan, I don't want all your grinning. What are you,
Huh?
what are you plotting back
Come
there?
on, Stan.
I'm just amazed at all the technology and what's happening with amateur radio.
Oh, okay. I'm sure that that's not it, but, anyway. So that's all the basic concept is, you're going radio to that repeater. Once you're in that repeater, your setting on your radio tells the repeater where to take your signal and where to send it out via these cables. Now, it's not really going by cable. For the Connecticut Aries repeaters, it's going by microwave to some point where it then gets distributed further. Or it goes directly, for the Norwalk repeaters, it's going directly on the internet. But
Okay,
that's,
so now, two people are having a conversation on worldwide,
yeah.
and you want to join in. Proper protocol to do that?
Just like on a regular repeater, when
Okay.
somebody releases
Okay.
the push to talk, you
Okay.
give a call and they should say, you know, whatever, I can't remember your call.
Join our,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know.
okay, okay.
I mean, and it's just like any other repeater. You're gonna get most people will be friendly and courteous, and some people will go away. You know.
And if you're hearing them clearly, your voice should go out as clear.
In general, not always, because you're hearing a signal coming from the repeater that's at 100 watts, depending on your repeater, 25 watts, 50 watts, 100 watts, you're using 4 watts.
So if I'm in a problemed area, I should say to them, ask them how do they hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
and if they're not hearing you very well, they're gonna tell you anyway.
Yeah,
you know.
okay.
But basically, like any HT, when you're talking to a repeater, you may be hearing the repeater fine, but people may not hear you on the repeater
Right.
fine.
Which was the case before.
And when you're talking worldwide, if the internet goes down in one area, you've lost worldwide. Am I correct?
Right. If
So it's not microwave throughout or HF
Right.
throughout.
right, there's not microwave throughout. It's mostly going via the internet.
I gotta go
Okay.
down.
So at some point, if there's loss of internet in some area, they're not going to be able to connect.
Well, there's always ways to route around it, because you may lose a certain region,
Yeah.
but they're always routing around that region.
No, but
still.
that region is out.
Within that region, you won't be
Yeah.
able to.
Right.
Right.
What is the typical, I mean, if you're talking worldwide, someone on the other side of the earth, what is the propagation delay?
Not much. It's, I would say that it's a second, not more than that.
Because you got a lot of hops to do.
Yeah, when I talk with someone in London, I'm not noticing a serious propagation delay.
It's a lot less than a satellite phone.
Yeah, it's a lot less than a satellite phone. Because it's not, for the most part, it's not going up 22,000 miles and down 22,000 miles.
So it doesn't really matter which repeater you're entering in on, as long as it's a clear passage for you to get to it in order to get to worldwide.
Yes.
If Long Island is a clear shot for me, then by all means go there,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Okay,
Or the Bronx,
or the Bronx, right.
or White Plains.
Long Island seems to be my clear.
Then
I
use
can
Long Island,
hear-
seriously.
Then no problem.
Okay.
I don't know if you
So,
can-
now, there are a number of regional talk groups, and they're springing up all the time. This is from a couple of months ago, just to give you an idea. If somebody in Oregon decided that they really wanted to be able to connect to into this area, they could, but it's not like there's a lot of demand, so people aren't bothering to connect up like that. Remember, you can have two conversations going on. We call that time slot 1 and time slot 2. Any independent conversation between time slot 1 and time slot 2. So what does that mean? You know, you can have one conversation going on time slot 1, you can have one conversation going in time slot 2. What if I had on time slot 2, what if I had Connecticut statewide and Northeast? Can I have conversations on both of those at the same time?
Yes.
No,
Why?
because they're both on the same time slot.
Oh, right,
Okay,
Right.
so and that's a function of the repeater.
right.
On the Connecticut area's repeaters in general, Northeast and Connecticut statewide are both on time slot 2. So you can't have, on Stanford repeater, you can't have a conversation on both of them at the same time. It's just the way it's done.
And how do you segregate which one you're using? You're both.
Generally, that's the repeater operator that decides how they're gonna configure it. Most of the area's repeaters are configured the same way. So the really distant ones, like Worldwide, Worldwide English, North America, are on time slot 1. The more local stuff is on time slot 2.
But how do you differentiate between Connecticut and Northeast, both on time slot 2?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You're on time slot 2.
Yeah,
You've got the availability of Connecticut or
or Northeast, yeah.
How do you segregate, or how do you tell which one that you're going to be able to talk on?
You pick,
How do you segregate one from the other when you're?
Because I've got two different settings on my radio. One says Connecticut, and one says Southwest Connecticut, and one says Northeast.
So they're both on time slot 2, but you can segregate those two within time slot 2 on.
Right, because your radio goes down to the talk group. You set up your radio to the talk group on that repeater. A talk group on a given repeater is called a channel. So on the Stanford repeater, you have a channel for Connecticut statewide that's on time slot 2. You have a different channel for Northeast that's on time slot 2. You have a different channel for North America that happens to be in time slot 1. Each of those is a separate channel, and when you tune your radio, you tune to a specific channel. So unlike an analog, on the digital stuff, you have multiple, on the DMR, you have multiple channels on a repeater. A channel is just selecting what talk group you're going to use. John, you look... No, you, John. You okay? You have a funny look on your face. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm good.
You're okay,
No,
okay.
it's great.
Now, Connecticut Aries has gone a little bit further in that they have Connecticut statewide is available on both time slot 1 and on time slot 2. So you can actually talk on statewide from either time slot 1 or from time slot 2. Because they figure in an emergency they want it available on both, because you never know what you're going to need. So again, for statewide, Connecticut Aries has put it on both time slot 1, time slot 2. It's the same talk group. If I get on statewide on time slot 2 and I start talking with Terry, if I switch over to time slot 1, Connecticut statewide, I'm still talking to Terry. So you could have all the channels on both time slots, but that's not usually what people are doing, because then it just fills up the time slots. If you take something like Worldwide, you can really have a problem, because there's almost always activity going on Worldwide. You would tie up both time slots of the repeater. So your repeater would be blocking, you would be blocked from having a second conversation.
That new hammer, Elena, just showed the old dog how it works.
All right. So, all right, so there's that. So as I said, repeaters present talk groups as channels. So there's Worldwide English on the Norwalk repeater on time slot 1, that's a channel. Worldwide English on Stanford was on time slot 1, that's a channel. Northeast is on Stanford on time slot 2, that's a channel. Connecticut statewide on Stanford on time slot 2 is a channel. Connecticut statewide on Stanford on time slot 1 is a channel.
So worldwide on Stanford repeater is the same as worldwide on Bayside, Long Island repeater.
Right.
Okay.
And the same on a repeater in
Right.
Canada, or same on a
Right.
repeater
Okay,
in...
you're just-
The talk group is, that's not defined by the radio, it's not defined by the repeater, it's not defined by the network,
Right.
it's defined as that pseudo cable,
Right.
and whether or not somebody wants to plug into it,
Okay.
okay? So this is the Norwalk repeater. It's non-Aries. You see, it's got worldwide, worldwide English, North America, Northeast, New England, and Southern New England. That's what they offer on that repeater. Here's a repeater out west. It has worldwide English, it has North America, and then it's got some regional for Utah and for Mountain. Why don't they have Connecticut statewide? Because there are a lot of people out in Utah who want to talk on Connecticut. Yeah.
How many talk groups are there in terms of the currently existing?
At least a couple of hundred, I don't know the exact.
And can your radio, can the repeater program all of those in, or can your radio?
The network, no, the radio doesn't control any of it.
All
It's
right.
all controlled by what the network operator.
All right, but he put, say if there's 100 of them, he can put 100 on his repeater?
Yes.
Maybe at the disadvantage because it's just garbage, a bunch of garbage. But,
Right.
I'm just curious as to what the expansion of the system would be.
They're usually not doing it because the programming is involved right now is very manual, very difficult programming to get it. So they're not bothering to try to get everything, but they could if they wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have the concept that the channels are presented in zones. So a channel is a talk group on a given time slot on a given repeater. Now I can put together channels as zones. Typically, people put together channels as different repeaters. I have a channel for Stanford. I have a channel for Norwalk. But I could have a zone, sorry. I have a zone for Stanford. I have a zone for Norwalk. Okay. But I can have a zone that has different repeaters on it. So for example, Port Lord has a zone that he calls my favorites. It's got Stanford Worldwide English, Norwalk North America, Stanford Northeast, Norwalk Northeast, Stanford Connecticut State, Norwalk Southern New England, Stanford Local, and Norwalk Local. That's the way he decided to do it.
Yeah.
Those are the frequencies he's mostly using. Those are the channels he's mostly using. So if he's in range of the Norwalk repeater, he uses the ones from Norwalk that are on here. If he's in range of the Stanford repeater, he uses the ones from Stanford that are on here.
That's smart to do that. He actually did that. He
Yeah.
did his own my favorites.
Yeah.
Which is easier because then you don't gotta keep going back to different zones.
Right.
You know, to find the one that's. Yeah.
Right, because the way on these radios, you have to go through a bit of a change to move from zone to zone.
Yeah.
So he's got it so he never has to change, not never, but he rarely has to change zone. Not a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, here's another one he calls My Local. Where he's got Norwalk, Southern New England, Norwalk, New England, Northeast wide, Norwalk, Northeast, sorry, any is New England, sorry. Norwalk, New England wide, Norwalk, Northeast, Norwalk, North America, Wilton, North America, Wilton, Northeast, Wilton R1, which is an Aries channel, and Wilton statewide, Connecticut statewide. That's the way he did it. So a zone is whatever you want it to be. You pick the channels, you put them together into a zone.
And R1 is what?
It's something that's used for Aries.
Oh.
Aries has created a bunch of channels, a bunch of talk groups for operation in the local areas. So Region 1. So that's, Aries has created a talk group that is just for Connecticut, Aries, Region 1.
Where do you go when you're brand new at this and you want to know what these abbreviations mean? Where can you get that?
These abbreviations are whatever you programmed into your software. That you have to know,
All right, but see, if you have somebody program your radio for you,
then you have to find out what
then you have to
abbreviations they
find out what
programmed in.
abbreviations
Yeah.
are.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I get
The
it.
only thing that's fixed is the names of the talk groups. But
Yeah.
once somebody creates a channel, they say, take the talk group that's called Connecticut Statewide and put it onto the Stanford repeater as CTSW.
Right,
That's because the person who programmed it put it that way.
yes.
You have to talk to the person who programmed it.
This all beginning to make sense. Okay,
And it's annoying because people use different
yeah.
abbreviations for things.
And it's not what you first think it is, like,
Right.
yeah.
But but that's absolutely up to the person who programmed it. It's not,
See, NA to me would mean non-applicable.
right. Right.
You know, it's, you gotta,
NE to me is northeast. To me, NE is northeast.
NA is?
NE is
No,
northeast.
I said NA.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but like NA is not applicable to you, to me, NE is northeast. But in fact, NE means New England for this one.
Exactly.
That's what he
You gotta
chose to
think-
do.
You gotta think, yeah.
Okay, one other thing, which we want to talk about, which is a nice feature if you use it right, and that's these RX groups, receive groups, and scan lists. So a scan list is just like a scan on a regular VHF radio. You can set up a list and say, when I press the button, I want you to scan these channels. Those channels can be on different repeaters. So I can tell it, I want you to go through, I want you to scan these 3 channels on Stanford, I want you to scan those 4 channels on Norwalk. And it just keeps cycling through the scan once you press the button until it hears something. There's also the concept of a receive group. A receive group says, I'm going to listen to a bunch of different channels at the same time. So, for example, if I'm on Connecticut Statewide, on the Stanford repeater, I can tell it, as long as you're on the Stanford repeater and you're on Connecticut Statewide, also listen in on Northeast. And if you hear anything on Northeast, even though I'm tuned to Connecticut Statewide, if you hear anything on Northeast, switch me to Connecticut, switch me to Northeast. The RX groups are limited in that they can only be on the repeater that you're on, and they can only be on the time slot that you're on. So if I'm on Connecticut Statewide on time slot 2, I can tell it to listen in on the other time slot 2 thing, the other time slot 2 channels that are on the Stanford repeater. I can't tell it to listen in on something that's on Norwalk, on a receive group. I cannot tell it to listen in on something that's on time slot 1 if I'm on a time slot 2 channel. Basically, it just says, think of it as you're telling it, open the squelch and listen to anything that's there. Think of it as that. But it's a nice feature, because I can hear if there's any activity on time slot 2. It can also be very confusing, because you're on Connecticut Statewide and you hear a conversation, so you pick up your radio and you press the push to talk, and you're on Connecticut Statewide and you call and you're not getting a response. Why? Because you were hearing a conversation on Northeast. And you didn't look at your radio first to see where the conversation was. And a couple of you who have these radios got confused by that early on. So what most people have done is they shut down the receive groups because it's confusing them. Over time, you start adding them back in as you get a good feel for the radio. But it's a nice thing because you can listen to a bunch of different things at the same time. It's not a scan. It's not going from channel to channel to channel to channel where you can miss something. It's listening to all of them at the same time. But it's limited to the current repeater on the current time slot. Just a nice feature. Now, what else can we talk? What else makes sense to talk about? Well, here's an example of what I mean. So this is a sample channel in Norwalk. The channel is called Norwalk SNE, Southern New England. The contact name, which is the talk group, is SNE. That's the official name of Southern New England. You don't have a choice on that one. You have a choice on calling it NORSNE. You could call it Norwalk Southern New England. You could call it NWK SNE S New England, South New England, whatever you want to call it that makes sense for you. That's totally up to you. What's that?
So when you program it for scan,
Yeah.
you have to pick,
For scan, you have to pick the channels that you're going to scan.
you gotta pick the channels you're gonna, okay. All right, so
And you go to a scan list.
it says turn on. What am I turning on?
I'm sorry, what saes turn on?
It says
Reprogram,
scan, turn on.
that you're turning on the scanner.
Turning on the
Versus
scan,
turning
yeah.
it off.
Right.
Your scan list is
But
pre-programmed.
you're programming your scan list,
Oh,
so only what you put in there is
Right.
what you receive.
Think of it, on a lot of the mobile rigs, you have banks. You know, you can set up a scan bank that, for example, Westchester repeaters. You can set up another scan bank of Connecticut repeaters. Think of your scan list as the same way. If you go to the scan list of Connecticut, of a bunch of channels,
okay.
and say, scan that one, it's going to scan those channels.
So it's
Okay.
actually listening simultaneously on all those.
No, it's a scan, just
It is
like on
scan?
your regular radio. The scan is a scan. It goes from channel to channel. It changes the radio from channel to channel to
Okay.
channel.
Like an old handheld scanner.
Like an old scan, like the scanner on any,
And how
any
many
Yaesu.
can you be scanning at the same time?
I think it's 16.
Is it how many?
But the problem is, the more you add to the scan,
Yeah, the more, yeah.
the more delay there is. So if each one's going to be scanned for, let's say, 3 seconds, and you
Yeah.
have 16 of them, that's almost a minute.
Yes.
So I
yeah,
start at position 1,
Yeah,
I miss it listens in, nobody's talking on there, it goes to position 2. Meanwhile, in position 1, somebody gets on and says, this is WB2RYV on Connecticut statewide. By the time it comes back there,
you've missed the whole thing.
you've missed the whole thing.
So while you're on your scan, and you're doing that, and you want to enter into that particular conversation, you then just enter
Hit the
in.
push to talk,
And
yeah.
it stops at that
Yes.
point?
Yes,
Okay, and then you have to reactivate it again by coding it back into scan?
yes.
Okay,
Steve?
You have to push the PTT within a certain amount of time when it's scanning to go to that scan channel. If you
Right.
don't, it's gonna go,
You're gonna miss it.
you're gonna miss it.
Yeah.
But with the receive one, like the other slide said, you won't key up on that channel. You have to look at the screen and say, okay, I just heard somebody talking on Connecticut statewide, I now need to manipulate the dials and go to that channel.
okay.
That's the receive groups. Scan, within the 5 seconds, I think.
Yeah.
John, I forgot. how
Whatever,
many-
you program your radio, it's an option.
So many seconds if you hit the PTT button, you will transmit on that.
Okay,
But the scan list that's in that radio you have was programmed through you don't hit the buttons to pick channels. That was in
Oh,
the
it's
software.
done.
When it was programmed
whoever
by
programmed.
Rob or Tom or whoever,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
the scan list was put in at that time.
Okay,
So-
I'm on
so the
overload
scan-
now.
Yeah, the scan, you're scanning, you receive, you're listening simultaneously on.
Right,
Okay.
right.
righty, it's 2
Okay.
o'clock.
All right, so one thing, wait, one thing. Now, with the CS 700, there are bugs in it. The guy originally said that there was going to be they would be field upgradable to correct the bugs. He's run into a problem, and he can't upgrade it in the field. So, what?
Throw the radio away.
No, he's $200. No, he's saying for 20 bucks, send it in for 20 bucks, including shipping, and he'll upgrade it and send it back. Now, some people in the CSI group on Yahoo groups are bitching and moaning about it. Well, you said it was going to be field upgradable. I don't want to have to spend 20 bucks.
Oh,
Screw them, they're imbeciles.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, he expected it to be that. They're getting, well, when I buy a Motorola, I expect it to work perfectly because it's a Motorola. Yes, you paid $700 for the Motorola. If you want to pay $700, you can have that. You paid $200, so you're going to pay an extra 20 bucks. That's still 2.5 or 3.5 Motorolas. You buy 3 of these radios for 1 Motorola, so yeah, you're going to have to send it back. Now, I would wait, let the first couple of people send these things in, let him perfect his technique before you send yours in. I'm going to wait until June or July before I send mine in.
How do you know, John, if yours has a problem?
Yeah.
How do you know if yours...
They all have a couple of problems. One is, if you're doing any DTMF, I think it's the pound key doesn't work. Another one that almost all of them have, essentially all of them have, is this crazy thing where when you release the push to talk, you get the beep, which you'll think of as a courtesy tone. So you're talking, you release the push to talk. Sorry, I said that wrong. Let me step back. Somebody else is talking. They release the push to talk. You hear the beep that we would think of as a courtesy tone. It has a different name in DMR, but we would think of it as a courtesy tone. And you go to transmit, and the radio gives you the bonk that says, sorry, you can't transmit now. And you have to wait until the repeater actually drops. The whole idea of that beep is to tell you, the other guy has stopped talking, quick, this is a good time to jump in, only you can't. It's a bug in the radio, in the software of the radio. He's got a fix for it. And there are a couple of other things. People with the Motorola say that the Connect System radio, the volume is too low, so he's got an adjustment for that. And you can hear it. You'll hear a conversation. You'll be turning the volume knob up and down, up and down, up and down. So that's adjustable. For 60 bucks, he's upgrading them to what he calls the 700A, which has some additional features in it that these don't have now. Same thing. I wouldn't do it right away. Wait a month or two, let them get used to it. You will have to get an RMA from them. You'll have to call up, you'll have to get an RMA, return merchandise authorization, but it's 20 bucks, or 60 bucks if you want this upgrade. But the amount of bitching that's going on in some of the boards, we expect this, we expect that, we expect it to work perfectly. You're a ham radio operator. Nothing works perfectly. You're supposed to deal with it, especially when you're paying $200 for a $700 radio.
Yeah.
So, anyway, okay. That's it. Anything else? Or let's do the drawing and then let people get out of here.
Thank you, John.